It all started on a warm, golden Saturday morning in the sleepy neighborhood of Willow Creek Place, where the pace of life felt like it had been dialed back 50 years. The sun had just risen high enough to cast gentle beams through the tall sycamore trees that lined Sycamore Lane. It was one of those perfect days, birds chirping, lawn sprinklers misting in rhythmic pulses, and the smell of freshly cut grass hanging sweet in the air. If you listened closely, you could hear the laughter of children weaving through the calm, peaceful silence. 8-year-old Lucy Martin was the unofficial leader of the neighborhood kids, a bundle of energy wrapped in a pink unicorn t-shirt. Armed with a bucket of sidewalk chalk and a wild imagination, she and her little brother Max had been up since dawn, waiting for their friends to come over and help transform the bland gray sidewalk into something magical. By 9 a.m., the group had gathered like little artists at a community mural. Lucy, Max, Sarah from next door, twins Jordan and Jason, and even timid little Benny from across the street all hunched over the pavement, chalk in hand. The sidewalk quickly became a kaleidoscope of colors. They drew hopscotch squares, bubble letters spelling out "Be Happy," silly cartoon monsters with 3 eyes, and hearts with arrows through them. Lucy took her time working on the centerpiece, a massive rainbow stretching across 3 sidewalk panels that arched into a smiling sun with sunglasses. It was the kind of moment that made childhood feel infinite. Giggling, yelling, swapping chalk, sticks like rare jewels. Every kid was in their zone, heads down and hearts full. Even a few passing neighbors slowed down to admire their work, smiling as they walked their dogs or jogged past. But that peaceful hum was about to be shattered. From the top of the cul-de-sac, a low mechanical rumble broke through the calm. The garage door at 1123 Sycamore Lane began to creak open. It was a slow, grinding noise, like the house itself was waking up in a bad mood. Behind it stood Karen Withers, a woman whose reputation had long preceded her, with her stiff blonde bob, large bug-eyed sunglasses, and lemon-lipped expression. She was known for issuing complaints like most people hand out candy on Halloween. She hated noise, hated bikes on sidewalks, hated dandelions, and above all else, she hated children. At least, that's how the kids saw it, as the garage door hitched to a stop. Karen stepped out onto her pristine driveway. She wore a matching velour tracksuit, arms crossed so tightly you'd think she was holding herself hostage. Her eyes scanned the sidewalk like a hawk spotting prey. And then it happened. Her voice cut through the laughter like a knife through a helium balloon. "What do you think you're doing?" The kids froze. Chalk pieces clattered to the ground. Lucy looked up from her rainbow, confused. Karen stormed down her driveway with purpose, each step sharper than the last. "This is asterisk vandalism." "Asterisk," she shrieked, gesturing wildly toward the artwork as if it were a crime scene. "You kids are defacing public property?" Sarah dropped her piece of chalk like it was evidence. Max clutched his stub of blue as if it were his only defense. The twins shuffled backward toward the curb. "But it's chalk," Lucy offered, her voice small but brave. "It washes away." Karen's eyes narrowed. "I don't care if it's glitter made by angels. This is my sidewalk. I don't want any of this childish nonsense in front of my house." Technically, it wasn't her sidewalk. Everyone on the block knew the concrete was C-owned, public use, but Karen didn't care about that. In her mind, anything within 10 feet of her. Roses belonged to her. Asterisk Max tugged on Lucy's shirt. "She's scary," he whispered. Karen turned and began inspecting the drawings like a detective searching for clues. She pointed at a butterfly Sarah had drawn. This is what's driving down property values. I don't want my house looking like a daycare center." Lucy's face turned red, not from embarrassment, anger, but she didn't say anything. Her mom had always told her to stay respectful, even when others weren't. So she simply started gathering her chalk pieces and putting them back into the plastic tub one by one. The other kids did the same. Nobody said a word. They just collected their colors, stepped away from the sidewalk, and stood silently, unsure of what they'd done wrong. Karen, satisfied with her public shaming, pivoted sharply and returned up her driveway. She muttered something under her breath about damn parents these days, then slammed the door behind her. The whole house seemed to flinch from the impact. The kids stood there for a few seconds. The magic of the morning sucked into a vacuum of scowls and neon velour. Lucy looked down at her rainbow. It was still there, bright and beautiful. But suddenly, it didn't feel like something worth smiling about. "I'm sorry, guys," she said quietly. Max kicked at the ground. "We didn't do anything wrong." "No," said Benny, hugging his chalk bucket. "We didn't, but the damage had been done." The joy was gone. They all began to walk home, some wiping chalk dust on their shirts. Others just dragging their feet like kids walking away from a party that ended too soon. Later that afternoon, Lucy's mom came outside and noticed the drawings. She smiled. For a second, till she saw the water stains. Lucy had already taken the garden hose and washed away her rainbow. She didn't want Karen to come yelling again. When her mom asked why, Lucy just shrugged. "We're not allowed anymore." That night, as the stars came out and the streetlights buzzed on, the sidewalk sat empty and gray. No drawings. No laughter. Just the sound of a breeze rustling the sycamore leaves. But inside her house, behind her curtain, Karen stared out at the clean concrete with a satisfied smile. She thought she'd won. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that the kids of Sycamore Lane had a whole lot more chalk. And even more imagination. The next morning brought with it the usual calm that blanketed Sycamore Lane on Sundays. Sunlight streamed down gently through the sycamore branches. Birds chirped as they flitted between fences, and the occasional dog barked lazily from a porch. But the children who had once laughed and knelt joyfully on the sidewalk were nowhere to be seen. The chalk art had vanished, washed away by garden hoses, and the heavy feeling left behind after Karen's outburst. What remained was a plain, silent strip of sidewalk, eerily clean except for one glaring change. At exactly 6:42 a.m., Mr. Dorsey, a retired Marine who took his morning walks like clockwork, turned the corner of the lane and stopped in his tracks. He squinted at the ground in front of Karen's house and rubbed his eyes like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. There, slashed across the pavement in giant neon orange spray paint, were two words so out of place they looked like they belonged in a crime drama. No trespassing. Each letter was tall, angry, and unapologetically permanent. The paint was thick and dripping slightly, as if Karen had finished the job just moments before sunrise. The garish orange clashed violently against the soft gray of the sidewalk, burning itself into the landscape. And most people, including Mr. Dorsey, knew exactly why it was there. By 9 a.m., word had spread. In Willow Creek, you didn't need Facebook or a community bulletin to get news around the grapevine was alive and thriving. Parents leaned over fences to gossip. Kids peeked from behind curtains, and even the mailman paused to snap a picture. Asterisk Marlene Langley, president of the HOA and the closest thing the neighborhood had to a mayor, walked down the lane clutching her coffee, thermos, and phone. She stopped right in front of the painted letters, shook her head, and sighed. She had received no fewer than 12 messages that morning to texts, 5 voicemails, and one very passionate email from a resident, who had titled their subject line Asterisk Karen's latest act of war. Asterisk, even Lucy's mom, Danielle Martin, came out in her slippers to stare at the sidewalk. She wasn't sure whether to laugh or curse. Spray paint, really? Few kids had already dared to approach the scene. Lucy stood quietly with Max at her side, both of them gripping their chalk buckets without much hope. Max looked up at the giant orange warning with a frown. "Is she allowed to do that?" he asked. Danielle didn't know how to answer. She crouched beside them and put a hand on Lucy's shoulder. "It's not right, sweetheart. That sidewalk doesn't belong to her. But some people, they like to make rules for everyone else and forget to follow them themselves." Sarah's dad came out with his coffee and shook his head at the letters. "This is just crazy," he muttered to his wife. "They're kids." It was chalk. Soon enough, someone posted a photo of the sidewalk to the Willow Creek neighborhood Facebook group. The caption was simple: "Greater than Karen bans chalk. Then vandalizes city property herself?" The post blew up. Within an hour, there were over 100 reactions and dozens of comments. Greater than asterisk, isn't spray paint illegal on public sidewalks? Imagine being this mad about butterflies and rainbows. Someone get this lady a hobby that isn't terrorizing children? Asterisk people began sharing stories this wasn't Karen's first offense. There were mentions of her scolding kids for walking too loudly, threatening to report Halloween decorations as visual pollution, and once yelling at a neighbor's teenager for parking a red car that clashed with her flowers, but this time felt different. It wasn't just that Karen had overreacted. It wasn't just the shouting or the scolding. It was the fact that in trying to erase harmless chalk drawings, she had replaced them with something worse, something loud, aggressive, and unmistakably permanent. Around noon, Marlene decided to pay Karen a visit. She approached the door with the kind of forced smile you save for dentist appointments, intense family dinners. She rang the bell. After a few moments, the door creaked open. Karen appeared, still in her tracksuit, lips pursed like she was sucking on a lemon wedge. "Marlene," she said coolly. "Hi, Karen," Marlene replied, keeping her tone even. "Just wanted to talk for a moment. Some neighbors are a little concerned about the, signage on the sidewalk." Karen folded her arms. Good, maybe now the neighborhood brats will think twice before defacing property. "It was chalk. Karen, it washes away." Karen gave a dry laugh. "Not the point. They were on my section of sidewalk, my lawn, my view. I don't need to walk out of my house and see finger paintings every Saturday. This isn't an elementary school." "Well," Marlene said carefully, "the sidewalk is technically public. It's city-owned. You don't have legal authority to spray paint it." Karen's eyes flared. "I have every right to protect my property." "It's not your property, Karen," Marlene said, her smile thinning, "and there are city codes about permanent markings. I just want to let you know people have contacted the city. Someone may be coming out to assess it." Karen scoffed and slammed the door without another word. Marlene stood there for a moment, exhaled slowly, and walked away, already composing an email in her head. As evening rolled around, the once sunny mood on Sycamore Lane remained dim. But beneath that silence, something was brewing. The kids weren't just scared anymore, they were insulted. And nothing makes a kid more determined than the feeling that someone's trying to take their fun away for no good reason. Lucy sat on her front porch, legs swinging off the step. She stared across the street at the huge letters glaring back at her like a personal threat. Max sat beside her, chewing on a piece of licorice. "Do you think she'll yell again if we draw somewhere else?" Max asked. Lucy didn't answer. Her fingers were curled around a purple piece of chalk. "Maybe," she said finally, "but maybe we just need to be louder in a different way." She wasn't talking about noise. She was talking about being seen, really. Seen. Not just as kids with chalk, but as voices that mattered. And she wasn't the only one thinking it, because across the neighborhood, in living rooms and backyards and garages, people were talking. Parents, teens, even the older residents who usually stayed out of things. This time, it wasn't just about Karen being Karen. It was about something deeper: community, expression, and the right to be a little colorful in a world that was already to gray. Karen may have thought her orange warning was a full stop, but to everyone else, it was a challenge, and Sycamore Lane was just getting started. The next day brought a different kind of energy to Sycamore Lane. It began quietly, almost unnoticeably. A few parents lingered outside longer than usual after morning coffee, chatting by the mailbox. A couple of teenagers who normally kept to themselves were spotted talking to Mr. Dorsey, the Marine vet, who nodded thoughtfully as they pointed toward Karen's house. One by one, subtle glances and small conversations hinted that something was shifting on the block. By noon, it was undeniable. The neighbors weren't just annoyed, they were mobilizing. Lucy didn't know exactly what was happening, only that her mom was on the phone a lot more and that she and Max were told not to go near Karen's house for the time being. But the grown-ups weren't the only ones cooking up plans. That afternoon, she met with the others at their usual spot, the corner near the big oak tree on Maple Court. Far enough from Karen's view, but close enough to feel like they hadn't given up. The group of kids sat in a circle, dusty knees, tangled hair, plastic tubs of chalk between them. Benny was the first to speak. "I heard my mom say she wants to paint over the spray thing." "She can't," said Sarah. It's not paint you can just scrub off. You'd need, like, chemicals. Or fire, Jason added, clearly too excited by the idea. No fire, Lucy said with a look. But we can do something. We should do something. What? Asked Max. Karen hates chalk. Exactly, Lucy said slowly. She hates it because it's not hers. But we didn't even draw on her driveway. It was the sidewalk that belongs to everybody, right? The kids all nodded. Then maybe we just need to remind people. All the people, not just her. Sarah looked confused. What do you mean? Lucy said, standing up and brushing off her shorts. We make the biggest sidewalk art project ever. It's not just one house, the whole street. For a second, the group was silent. Then Max grinned, like a chalk parade. Exactly, Lucy said. A chalk parade. Everyone joins in. Yeah, not just kids. Moms, dads, even Mr. Dorsey. Benny looked doubtful. Do you think they'll do it? Mad too, Lucy said. They just need a reason to do something about it. So the kids got to work not with chalk, but with plans. They split up and visited every friendly door on the block, knocking politely, offering folded notes with scrawled drawings of smiling suns and a message at the bottom. Asterisk join the chalk parade tomorrow at 10 a.m. One street, one voice, one giant rainbow. Asterisk, they didn't bother dropping one off at Karen's dot. By the time the sun dipped behind the rooftops that evening, Sycamore Lane had transformed from a sleepy neighborhood into a quiet resistance. Buckets of chalk appeared like Easter eggs on porches. Teenagers who normally rolled their eyes at kid stuff were rummaging through garages for sidewalk safe spray and paint rollers. Even Mrs. Tran, the elderly widow from the corner lot, brought out her late husband's old folding table and set it up near her fence. Somebody's got to pass out lemonade, she said. The anticipation was electric. Karen, however, remained oblivious. At 9:58 a.m. the next morning, her blinds twitched. She saw Mr. Dorsey setting up a chair in front of his house, a sun hat on his head and a blue chalk stick in his hand. She saw the Lopez twins drawing stars outside their gate. She saw Lucy and Max crouched side by side at the base of their driveway, coloring something in bold pinks and oranges, and then the parade began. Asterisk, it wasn't a parade in the traditional sense. No floats, no marching bands, no waving politicians. But it felt like a parade, colorful, joyful, united. The sidewalk became a patchwork quilt of drawings, rainbows, flowers, quotes from Dr. Seuss and Maya Angelou, symbols of kindness, peace, signs, animals, favorite cartoons, even a portrait of the neighborhood's grumpiest cat. One section read in bubble letters, asterisk public sidewalk, public art. Another said, color can't be canceled. Asterisk, it wasn't loud. There were no speeches. Just soft music playing from someone's Bluetooth speaker and the sounds of chalk scraping against pavement. Laughter, and the occasional, can you pass the red? Karen opened her front door at 10:32. She stood there, horrified. The sidewalk in front of her house had not been left blank. In fact, it was one of the most vibrant sections. Someone, not a kid, had used stencils and paint to write, asterisk, this sidewalk belongs to the community, not just you. Asterisks surrounding it were doodles of open hands, flowers, and a miniature replica of Lucy's rainbow from days before. But this time, the rainbow wasn't alone. It was part of a mural that stretched halfway down the street. Karen's face turned red. She marched down her driveway like a storm cloud, lips pressed into a furious line. She didn't yell this time. She didn't need to. She stood in the middle of her sidewalk, turning slowly, trying to decide who to scream at first. But everyone was watching. Even Marlene had shown up. She was sitting on a lawn chair, sipping lemonade from Mrs. Trant's stand, watching the scene unfold with a look of almost maternal pride. When Karen's eyes met hers, Marlene raised her cup in a polite, mistakably smug salute. Karen turned around and stormed back inside. No one followed. No one needed to, because this wasn't about Karen anymore. It was about claiming joy in a space everyone shared. It's about refusing to be silenced by someone whose idea of order meant stripping away color and community. About saying, in one big collaborative voice, We belong here too. The parade lasted until almost noon. By then, the sidewalk from end to end was a canvas of art, jokes, names, doodles, and declarations. Some families took group photos beside their work. Others walked the whole block just to admire each other's creations. Lucy and Max stood with their mom in front of their new rainbow, the one that hadn't been washed away. It was brighter this time, stronger. Lucy looked down the street and smiled. "Do you think she'll paint over it?" Danielle laughed. "I think if she tries, she'll need a lot more orange. And more neighbors to help," Max added. They all knew the truth now. Even if Karen did try again, she'd be alone. Everyone else, they'd be chalk in hand, ready. The days that followed were different, not just in color, but in spirit. Sycamore Lane, once a quiet suburban street where the loudest noise came from lawnmowers and sprinkler systems, had come alive in a way no one expected. The chalk parade had ignited something in the neighborhood, and its effects rippled far beyond. The smudged rainbows and flower patterns dotting the sidewalk each morning. More people came out just to walk the lane, to take in the artwork and smile at strangers. Elderly couples held hands and pointed at messages like "kindness is contagious and you belong here." Parents took photos of their children beside sunbursts and peace signs, posting them on social media with captions like "*This is what community looks like." Karen, however, stayed quiet. Her blinds were often drawn. Her trash bins remained untouched for 3 days. The usual morning complaints she submitted to the HOA stopped completely, and no one missed them. People had stopped tiptoeing around her. They smiled politely if they passed her by, but they no longer paused to listen or explain themselves. Karen's words no longer had gravity her. Outrage had been outmatched by laughter and chalk dust, but she hadn't forgotten. On the 4th morning, just before dawn, she stepped outside. The street was still asleep, with gloved hands and a black trash bag tucked under her arm. She began scrubbing at the nearest drawings with a sponge and a bottle of industrial cleaner. She started with the quote in front of her house, the one about community. It had become a sort of landmark with kids pointing it out proudly during walks. Karen crouched down, scrubbing furiously, muttering to herself as the colors smeared into grayish streaks. She didn't get far. By 6:45 a.m., Mr. Dorsey appeared on his usual walk. He paused mid-step, watching her silently. "You know," he said, "after a beat, you've got a lot of nerve trying to wipe away what you didn't make." Karen stiffened. "It's graffiti." "No," he said, "it's chalk. Just like it was last week." And that, he nodded at her faded orange nitrogen monoxide. "Trespassing. Sin, still staining the sidewalk near her driveway, is the real graffiti." Karen stood, chest heaving slightly. "I don't have to listen to this." He didn't argue, just nodded again and walked on. But that was enough. By 7:15, Sarah's mom had come outside to water her plants. She watched Karen scrub the sidewalk and called out, "Need a hand?" The tone was bright, but there was no warmth in it. Karen glared at her. "If people would teach their kids respect, I wouldn't have to clean up their mess. They respect each other just fine," Sarah's mom said coolly. It's only you they avoid." By 8:30, 3 more neighbors had seen her. Some snapped photos. Others simply stood at their driveways, arms crossed, saying nothing. Stares spoke volumes. Karen dropped the sponge and went inside, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the mailbox. That was the last anyone saw of her for days. In her absence, the neighborhood bloomed, washed away, were touched up, and refreshed. New designs appeared, whimsical, strange, lovely. A group of teens created a collaborative mural featuring cartoon versions of every pet on the block. Someone else wrote, "No hate on this lane," in bold blue block letters at the start of the sidewalk. Even the city got involved, a representative from the Parks and Streets Department stopped by after a formal complaint, presumably. Carenza was filed regarding unauthorized sidewalk vandalism. But after walking the block, he simply laughed. The chalk was harmless, he said. In fact, the community spirit it had sparked was exactly the kind of civic engagement the city hoped for. He left with a lemonade and a selfie beside the cat mural and Karen. Her house became a dark spot on a vibrant Linnaeus symbol of what tried to stop joy and failed. Then came the letter. It arrived a week later, slipped into every mailbox in the neighborhood, printed neatly on plain white paper, unsigned but unmistakably hers. It read, "Greater than to whom it may concern, greater than asterisk, it has come to my attention that I am no longer welcome in my own community. I have been harassed, mocked, and publicly shamed for simply expressing my right to a peaceful and orderly environment. If children wish to draw, let them do so on their own driveways. I will be submitting a formal report to the Homeowners Association and consulting legal counsel regarding defamation and public disturbance. Consider this your notice." Asterisk, it wasn't a surprise. Karen had always preferred letters when she couldn't win arguments. But this time, her words carried no weight. No one replied. No one argued. Facebook group the same day was someone scrawling asterisk live, laugh, lawsuit. In the comments, within hours it had been turned into a meme, complete with chalk hearts and a photoshopped photo of Karen with a crayon crown. Lucy, meanwhile, felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just that they'd stood up to someone unfair. It was that they'd done it together, kids, adults, and everyone in between. She started carrying her chalk in her backpack, just in case. Other kids did too. They weren't afraid anymore. They'd realized something important. Being quiet doesn't always mean being respectful. Dum-dum, sometimes the most respectful thing you can do is stand up with color, with courage, with community. One Saturday, a month after the original incident, the neighborhood held a block party. It wasn't official. There were no permits or bounce houses. Just grills on driveways, folding chairs in front yards, and tables filled with potluck dishes and lemonade pitchers. Music played from a Bluetooth speaker. Kids played tag between. Teens drew a collaborative comic strip that stretched an entire half block. Mr. Dorsey told war stories to a group of fascinated 7-year-olds while sipping sweet tea. At the edge of the party, Lucy stood in front of a new rainbow. She had drawn with Max. It wasn't her best work. It was a little lopsided, and the red kept mixing with the blue to make a weird kind of brown butt she didn't mind. Danielle came over and kissed the top of her daughter's head. "You okay, Luce?" Lucy smiled. "I'm really good." She meant it. Across the street, Karen's blinds were shut, but nobody noticed. Nobody needed to. The lane had moved on brighter, louder, better than before. And from that day on, their rule is unspoken but universally known. If you want to yell at kids for drawing rainbows, you better be ready for an army of chalk.